Hello, good evening, SC viewers. This is Satellite Media. Let us analyze the controversy between the FCT minister talking about Wike and a senior advocate of Nigeria and talking about OZEKHOME and a senator that represented Kaduna Central Senatorial District in the 8th Assembly, where the FCT minister challenged OZEKHOME in his disposition to defend election riggers. He equally challenged the former senator about his quality of representation while in the Senate. But we are looking at this as it has to do with the 2023 general election. That is Nigerian presidential election that was held in 2023. And we are going to be looking at this with respect to what are we looking at in 2027, as to whether we are prepared as a people, as a country, to conduct a free, fair, and credible election come 2027. Recall that before the 2023 presidential election, Nigerians, civil liberty organizations, all stakeholders put pressure on the then National Assembly to amend the Electoral Act, particularly in the area of transmission of election results. That saw the National Assembly amending some relevant section of the Electoral Act, particularly Section 52 and Section 65, that gave INEC the liberty, the discretion to determine the mode of transmission of election results. And before we went into the election, as expected, INEC, which is the umpire, of course, who is the end user of that Electoral Act, came up with their guideline. And in their guideline, what Nigerians, electorates, we're looking out for is the mode of transmission of election results. And as expected, INEC came up with the idea that they were going to transmit election results electronically, and that pleased Nigerians across board. But surprisingly, during the election, INEC gave an excuse of network glitch, a situation that made aggrieved parties, after the result was declared, to approach the courts. And the issue went from Presidential Election Petition Tribunal up to the highest court of the land. I'm talking about Supreme Court, where the court ruled, relying on that particular Section 52 and Section 65 of the Electoral Act, I think 2022, that INEC has the liberty to determine the mode of transmission of election results. And many Nigerians have argued after that decision of the Supreme Court that there is every need to revisit that Electoral Act, perhaps to amend that particular Section 52 and 65 of that Electoral Act that gives INEC the liberty to determine the mode of transmission of election results. To amend in such a way that the Constitution, or rather the Electoral Act, should streamline, should tie the hand of INEC. Because most Nigerians have the view that INEC do not have that, is not responsible enough to be given the power of discretion to determine the mode of transmission of election results. Before the election, we were made to understand that election result, particularly from the polling units, will be transmitted to the IREF, that is INEC server. And from the polling units, we have from EC8A that emanates from the polling units. Understandably, what we are told was that during the after counting of results, in the presence of all the representative delegates of all the presidential candidates, result declared at the level of polling units, it will be transmitted directly to IREF, from where all the stakeholders, including parties, all the parties that participated, election observers, Nigerians, can have access to the IREF and view the result real time as it's trickling in. Now, unfortunately, INEC gave excuse of network glitch. I am bringing this angle to this conversation because we have not seen energy, vigor on the part of Nigerians, on the part of electorates, on the part of all the stakeholders in Nigeria to kickstart the process of amending the relevant sections of Electoral Act, particularly the area that gives INEC the liberty to determine the mode of transmission of election results. And if we go into the next round of election with the current status quo, with the current Electoral Act, I'm talking about that 2022 Electoral Act, it is giving INEC the same leverage, the same discretion to determine the mode of transmission of the election result, and that has up to now made many Nigerians, stakeholders, to lose confidence in the ability of INEC to manage a free and fair, credible election. About the view that all the energy is being dissipated, all the energy being used in most of the areas by Nigerians, by civil liberty organizations, by activists, should be rechanneled, because we want to deepen democracy. We want a situation where vote will start counting. We want a situation where if parties go into election, at the end of the election, every party that participated, nobody will have cause to approach the Election Petition Tribunal. Because if the election result that comes out at the end of the process is seen to be free, fair, and credible and acceptable by all the parties that participated, I don't think at the end of the day we'll be seeing people approaching the Electoral Tribunal for the purpose of seeking redress. We often see redress because people feel dissatisfied. And another issue that we need to address is, after the election, we understand that during the election, there was, apart from dissatisfaction of Nigerians and the electorates with respect to the mode of transfer of election result, though INEC gave excuse of network glitch, we have another issue that has to do with other areas of malpractice, where political players will try to circumvent the process. And we understand that we have police, the military, the navy, if it has to do with area that is maritime, and even the Air Force. And during the electioneering period, during the period of voting, all stakeholders are drafted into the election management process. And it's understandable that after the election, some culprits, some suspects may have been arrested with respect to trying to circumvent the process. But often than not, we hardly see the umpire or the authorities bringing people to book, dragging people to court to prosecute them on the basis of the allegation that they may have compromised the process. And we understand that the essence of law, the essence of prosecution, is to act as deterrent to others. So if you have a situation where people presumably committed crime, try to circumvent the process, the electoral process, and at the end of the day, perhaps they are arrested and maybe they are given a slap on the wrist and asked to go. Of course, what we are going to see in the next round of election, come 2027, is to embolden people to do more, to circumvent the process more. Since people who have been arrested were not prosecuted, of course, there is no deterrent for people who committed wrong thing during that election. So if that is the case, I think we are likely going to see more people trying to circumvent the process. I think if we equally look at the area, because there are so many areas, if we want to deepen this democracy, there are so many areas we need to look into. In that same amendment of the Electoral Act, I'm equally of the view that I think as a people, we are matured for independent candidacy. We understand that the political parties, particularly the major political parties that fit candidates in the election, the amount they normally attach to expression of interest form and nomination form is always outrageous. That even in some cases, some Nigerians who may be popular in their area of jurisdiction, in their constituency, may not have what it takes. They may not have the financial muscle to go into the election, going by the way the political parties attach such humongous amount to their expression of interest form and nomination form. So in that regard, I'm of the view that in reviewing the Electoral Acts, let us have a situation where they bring down the amount of money. Let the Electoral Act compare political parties to reduce the amount or they will sell their nomination forms and their expression of interest, such that people at the average level can afford it. And again, if we are having independent candidacy, I understand that there are some Nigerians who may not belong to a political party, who may not want to associate themselves with a political party and want to stand for an election. If there is provision for independent candidacy, I believe such persons could explore that area to participate in the electoral process, to be voted for. And perhaps, who knows, they may be the type of people that have what it takes, the managerial acumen we need to salvage the Nigerian situation. Now, let us look at 2027 election proper. We understand that in Nigeria, election comes and go, and we have 4 years tenure for the president, for the governors, House of Assembly members, senators, House of Rep members. So in that regard, in 2027, we'll be going to another round of election. Are we now saying that, judging from our experience, everything we learned from the 2023 election, are we saying there is no need to improve on the electoral process? Because to maintain the status quo is to say we are satisfied with what we had in 2023 before the election. And if we say we are satisfied, we are not tinkering with the status quo, and allow INEC to continue parading this power of discretion. I don't think Nigerians will be satisfied after 2027 election. We have a situation where in 2027 election, though it is too early to start knowing who is going to contest election and who is not going to contest election, but we have seen so many persons indicating interest to run for the presidency come 2027, particularly the Labour Party candidate in the 2023 election. I'm talking about Peter Gregory. His body language shows that he's likely going to contest the election in 2027. Someone like Alhaji Atiku Abubakar, who was the vice president of Nigeria from 1999 to 2003 or 2007, has equally indicated interest, where he said that he will continue to run for election until health permits him, as long as his health permits him. So in that, judging from that, all the stakeholders must come together as a people, as a country, to put pressure on the system, on the government, particularly the National Assembly, that have the mandate to amend the Electoral Act, to see to amending the Electoral Act, to have a robust Electoral Act that will engender free, fair, and credible election come 2027. Because I'm of the view that if we maintain the status quo and go into the next round of election come 2027, we are likely going to have a repeat of all we had in 2023. Another area of interest has to do with stringent laws should be enacted to punish people who try to circumvent the process by disenfranchising Nigerians. Needless going into the details of what transpired in 2023 election, but we understand that in some part of Nigeria, some people were deprived from voting. I think that has been established by so many people who observed the election. Needless going into the details, but what we are saying is, let us have stringent laws that will punish offenders in that regard. And if we do all this, I'm of the view or the opinion that is going to engender free, fair, and credible election. And if you have that, it will build confidence between the government and the governed. And if you have that, Nigerians will start trusting their leaders. But if you have a situation where there's that perception, whether rightly or wrongly, that the people who are in government perpetuated themselves into power through manipulation, of course, there is no way that trust will be there. And if that's the case, it's very difficult to have a good atmosphere. It's very difficult to have a good environment, because just like the Bible says, that can two work together except they agree. So we have to come in agreement. And the only way we can come in agreement is you have a process that everybody participated, and when I met through the process that is not just seen to be free, fair, and credible, but that is free, fair, and credible in all sense, which the observers, whether locally or internationally, we are judged to be free, fair, and credible. We understand that after the election, international observers wrote their report. I think particularly the one that caught attention of most Nigerians had to do with the one that came from the European Union, where they raised some issues about registration of voters. They raised some issues about disenfranchisement of Nigerians. They raised some issues about transmission of election results. And I must tell you that more than 1 year after the election and after all the election observers turned in their report, I don't think the authorities, the government, particularly National Assembly, is ready to kickstart the process of amending the Electoral Act. And if they are not ready on their own, I think as Nigerians, as civil liberty organizations, as stakeholders, as activists, I think Nigerians should come together to remind the National Assembly that this is your responsibility, you owe Nigerians this duty, and you must deliver on it. I think that is a good place to let it go. Until we come your way next time, remain blessed. This is Satellite Media, and I am Matthew. Thank you very much for your time.